Finally, we look at the top 3 teams of the 2013 season, starting with Ferrari, who got 354 points, 242 to Alonso, 112 to Massa, compared to 2012 where they finished second in the standings with 400 points, 278 to Alonso, 122 to Massa. And Ferrari had one of the most experienced driver pairings on the grid this season, with Alonso having 11 years worth of experience and Massa 9.5, and compared to 2012 where they both had 1 year less worth of experience, with Alonso with 10 and Massa with 8.5 respectively. And they started the year very well with a great car out the box, Ferrari, but just suffered with derailment and again wind tunnel issues throughout the year, where the numbers in the wind tunnel weren't correlating with the numbers that were getting out on track, and they just seem to be struggling a lot on the technical side of that team. And to help that, they've brought in James Allison from Lotus in July as the chassis technical officer to work alongside Pat Fry, and Allison's designed some couple of tidy Lotus cars the previous couple of seasons, and so Ferrari are hoping he brings success to that team once again. Work with the former McLaren guy in Pat Fry, hopefully ease his workload as well, and hopefully that's a good partnership for Ferrari going forward into 2014, where it's a clean slate and they need to be strong on the technical side to be challenging, for titles, and also on the power unit side as well, which probably is even a bigger factor as well in next year's championship. But for Ferrari, they did have something to celebrate at the end of the year, as in Abu Dhabi they passed McLaren's longest point scoring streak, which McLaren's ended in at the Canadian Grand Prix, and Ferrari's, theirs is still going at the end of the season at 67 races strong. So at least Ferrari had a good reliable car to the finish this season. And they had a very good reliable number 1 as well in Fernando Alonso, who for the 3rd time in his Ferrari career finished runner-up in the driver standings with 242 points, with his best race wins in China and Spain and 5 second place finishes. His best qualifying was 3rd at Malaysia, China, Bahrain and Brazil, and in Japan he broke Michael Schumacher's point scoring record, and he ended the season with 1,606 career points, which he celebrated with a helmet design, as you seem to do in modern F1. And he also celebrated making his 200th start in F1 alongside Mark Webber at Bahrain, and had a great feature on BBC as well, talking to each other, celebrating that fact. And at the end of the season, Alonso had 215 race starts, enough for 8th all time, and he also had 2 fastest laps at Germany and Abu Dhabi. And as you would expect an Alonso team, he kind of dominated Massa in the teammate battle. In qualifying it was 2-2, 3-2, 7-3 to Alonso, so pretty close actually between them in qualifying. 9-6 and 11-8 at the end of the season, so Massa and Alonso, not too much difference on their one lap pace it seems in qualifying, but in the race it was 3-1, 4-1, 9-1, 14-1 and 17-2 to Alonso in the end. So on a Sunday Massa was no match for Alonso, but on a Saturday it was actually not too much difference between the two in the end. And in the Q3 battle it's 4-4, 5-5, 10-7 to Alonso, 15-12 and 19-15 to Alonso in the end, with Massa only the guy out in Q1 between the pairing all season long at Monaco. And when they both finished, it was 15-1 to Alonso, with Massa only finishing ahead of Alonso at India. In point scoring finishes, it was 17-15 to Alonso, so at least Massa was consistently scoring points, but Alonso was consistently getting the podiums more and the wins more, and generally scoring more points than Massa when they finished races, as you saw with the race battle, generally finishing ahead of Massa throughout the season. It was 9-1 and podiums to Alonso as well, with Massa's only podium at Spain. Laps led was 89-10 to Alonso. In retirements, Alonso only had 1 retirement at Malaysia, when he had that collision damage on the first lap and the second corner when he went into the back of Vettel's Red Bull, and for some reason they just didn't call him in at the end of that one, Ferrari, and Alonso didn't bring himself in at the end of that one. And so when he came out of the draft of the Red Bull coming onto lap 2, his ring just broke and he crashed at turn 1, was in the gravel, and it was pretty embarrassing for all involved, I think, as maybe they were gambling on the weather, hoping it would dry up and hoping the wing would last at the end of lap 2 so they could pit onto the dry tyres, but it wasn't really a gamble worth taking, as it resulted in him scoring no points. And the points could have been handy for Ferrari in the constructors' battle, as they were ever so close to Mercedes in the end and lost by just a few points. So maybe that decision in Malaysia did cost them second place in the constructors' standings. But in general for Alonso, fantastic year, once again showing that perhaps he's the best driver on the grid. Again, we can't really compare the teammate with the team situation there, but again, it was just a fantastic year for Button, for Alonso even, and for Button as well, but for Alonso even more, as he showed that he was a driver that is perhaps the best in the business, at least on the F1 grid at the moment. Meanwhile, for Felipe Massa, he was 8th in the stands, 112 points, best off 3rd in Spain and 4th at Australia, Italy and India, best qualifying of 2nd in Malaysia and 4th in Italy, Bahrain and Australia. And this was down from 2012, where he finished 7th in the stands with 122 points, 2 podiums and 4 fourth places. And in general, Ferrari were down as well from 2012. And for Massa, as I said, he was out in Q1 in Monaco. His only podium at Spain, had 2 retirements at Monaco with that suspension issue heading into turn 1, quite a scary crash. Good to see that it was okay afterwards though. And in Germany, when he spun on that fall going into turn 1, and it looked like it might have been a mechanical error at the time, but it was just a driver error in the end, and yeah, that was not very good for Massa at all. As in general, you know, Alonso had the better of him on the Sunday. He couldn't match him in the race. He couldn't match him for consistent race pace. He's struggling just to manage the tyres as well compared to Alonso, and just managing to get past guys as well compared to Alonso. He's always battling, it seemed, Massa in race as well. Alonso getting more clean air throughout the races. But in the qualifying battle on the Saturday, much closer, and in the second half of the season, when the shackles were kind of undone a bit more on Massa, it was actually 5-4 in the end to Massa in the second half of the season. So in one that pace, Massa can actually match Alonso, it seems, out on most of the time, but just on the Sunday, Alonso's just a machine, just so much better than Massa. And as I talked about the shackles being undone for Massa, well, he's announced at Williams and Raikkonen announced himself at Ferrari. So for Massa, it's a very different environment at Williams, a much better environment for him, I believe. He's a #1 driver there. First time he's leading the team in F1 in his F1 career, so that would be very interesting to see. Well, you know, Raikkonen and Alonso, you know, it would be a very interesting pairing for Ferrari, champion pairing for them in 2014. But for Massa, a very different environment at Williams. It won't be his team because Bottas has been with that team longer, but it's just going to be better for him, I believe. And I see it'll be a bit more of the Massa of old that we've seen on occasion in the past few years, but it's just not consistently been there, unfortunately. And so for Massa, yeah, not the best year for him. It's okay year for him. As I said, it was down from 2012, just like Ferrari were down from 2012. For Alonso, it's a fantastic year for him, but Ferrari, a disappointing year in the end, where they should have got second in Constructors' Championship, but were pipped to it in the end by Mercedes. And, you know, they really should have got that second place, really considering the car they had in the first half of the year, and they just fed off the wagon in the second half of the year, and they can't afford to do that into 2014, having these problems on the technical front, because of course they're making an engine, the power unit, and they'll be designing the car as well. They brought in James Hansen to help with that, and if the design and engine don't mix, you know, it doesn't seem like it will work out for them in 2014, as the power unit seems to, you know, be a bit more than the aerodynamics, which has been a bit reduced for next season. But in general for Ferrari, they really need to improve in 2014. But yeah, a bit of a disappointing 2013 in the end for them. But let's look at the team that pipped them to second place in the Constructors, Mercedes now. And the Silver Arrows had their best season since returning as a team in 2010, as they finished runner-up in the stands with 360 points, 189 to Lewis Hamilton, 171 to Nico Rosberg. Compared this to 2012, where in total they had 142 points, 93 to Rosberg and 49 to Schumacher. And experience-wise coming into the season, their big signing, Lewis Hamilton, had 6 years worth of experience with McLaren previously, and Nico Rosberg had 7 years worth of experience. Compared to 2012, where Rosberg had 6 years worth of experience, and Michael Schumacher had 18 years worth of experience. Well, it's a very different Michael Schumacher from 2010 to 2012 to the one that drove in F1 from 91 till 2006. And with one of the best drivers in F1 history in Schumacher, they replaced him with one of the best drivers on the grid in Lewis Hamilton. And it was one change of many for Mercedes this season, as Paddy Lowe joined the team as an executive technical director on the 3rd of June 2013. And it was their first season without Norbert Howell since 1989. It was also their last season with Ross Brawn as team principal, with him leaving the team at the end of the season following a disagreement about his role in the team going forward in 2014. Just too many people at the top there, too many signings for Mercedes. They've really been beefing up their technical department in recent years and since coming back. But the big controversy for Mercedes this season was Tiregate. They got involved in it after testing with Pirelli tyres after the Spanish Grand Prix with their drivers in their current season car, and it was discovered in Monaco, and the team were not allowed to run in the long drivers test, or the tyre test as it turned out, at Silverstone in July. And this punishment only really punished the guy who wasn't even involved in it, Sam Bird, their reserve driver. And arguably Mercedes had one of the best cars in the field in the first half of the season, along with Ferrari and Lotus, occasionally of course Red Bull. And Mercedes had a very good, very quick qualifying car, maybe help with the DRS, and we just don't know. But in general, the Mercedes had a very quick car over one lap, just not as good over a whole race distance. And we've seen that as the season went on, where they had a very good qualifying pace, but just couldn't really match it in the race. And that's kind of disappointing for Mercedes, that they couldn't keep the same level up in the races, but I'm sure that will come with them. They had a very good base car there, they just couldn't extract the pace on the Sunday for some reason. Maybe issues with the tyre, and maybe the drivers just couldn't get the best out of the tyres on the Sunday, but could on the Saturday, where the car just worked really well. And it worked really well for Lewis Hamilton all season long, as he finished 4th in the stands with 189 points. His best race was that win in Hungary. He also got four third places at Malaysia, China, Canada and Belgium. He had the best qualifying of 5 poles, including 4 in a row from Great Britain to Belgium, and also 1 in China. And he was only finished out of the points in Spain, and with his retirement at Japan, where in Spain, as I said, it just highlighted the differences between Mercedes from the Saturday to the Sunday. That was probably their worst example of that all season long. And in 2013, he finished with 1 less point than he did in 2012. But in 2012, he got 7 poles, 7 podiums, and 3 wins with MacLeod. He also suffered with a cracked chassis in the 3rd quarter of the season, and that was kind of discovered and reported after India, where they changed his chassis for the last part of the season, but it didn't seem to really make much difference, as in general, it just seemed like Hamilton just struggled in that middle part of the season and near the end of the season as well, compared to Rosberg in the second half of the season. But in the first half of the season, it was almost all Hamilton, as highlighted in the qualifying and race battle, where it was 3-1 to Hamilton, 3-2, 7-3 to Hamilton at halfway mark in the qualifying battle, then 10-5 and 11-8 to Hamilton in the end, as you would expect. What the guy rated with one of the fastest guys over a single lap. And in the race battle, it's 4-0, 4-1, 7-3 to Hamilton at the halfway mark once again in the race battle. 9-6, then 10-9 in the end to Hamilton at the end. So in the race battle and qualifying battle, it really closed up in the second half of the season. It seemed Rosberg just got hold of things, and as I said previously, Hamilton maybe struggled with his chassis a bit there, and just struggled in general. And there was also one faster lap for Hamilton at Italy. And in the Q3 battle, it was close once again, 3-1, 3-2, 6-3 to Hamilton, 9-4 and 9-7 to Hamilton in the end. And with them out in Q2, 2 times for Rosberg, 11th in Germany and 12th in America, and 1 time to Hamilton, 12th in Italy. And in poles and front rows, it was 5-3 to Hamilton and 4-4, with an all front row start for Mercedes at Spain, Monaco and Great Britain. And in point scoring finish, it was at 17-16 to Hamilton, as Rosberg did score a lot of points. Hamilton just pipped him a bit slightly with the podiums, and just scoring generally just slightly better when he did get to the finish and get more points scoring. And in podiums, it was 4 to Rosberg and 5 to Hamilton, with that win and 4 third places. And there was that retirement in Japan for Hamilton, when he had a collision into the second corner, on that first corner, if you count the first part as just a kink, where he just went into the side, someone just damaged the front ring, just damaged the floor, it seemed. And that was his race over, where he looked like he was going to get very good points again for Mercedes, qualifying high up. So it was going to miss opportunity for Hamilton. But in general, it was a very good year for Hamilton, and it was a very good year for Rosberg as well. He finished 6th in the stands, 171 points. His best race was that win in Monaco and Great Britain, a 2nd in India and 3rd in Abu Dhabi. His best qualifying was those 3 poles in Bahrain, Spain and Monaco, and he only finished out of the points when he retired, which happened on 2 occasions, with 1 classified finish, an electrical problem in Australia, suspension in China and an engine problem in Hungary at the last stage of the race, when he was set for only points finish. And for Rosberg, it was his best season in F1 as he had his best position in the Drivers' Championship. That was up from 7th in 2009, 10 and 11, and he was only 9th in 2012 in the Drivers' Championship. So great improvement for Rosberg from a year previously or the previous season. And for Rosberg, when they both finished races, he finished ahead of Hamilton more. It was 8-7 to Rosberg, and in general it's just very close between the two. Rosberg led more laps than Hamilton during the year. It was 104, that was second to only Vettel's total, and Hamilton led 66. So that's actually pretty surprising now on the Sunday that Rosberg was actually better than Hamilton when they both finished. When you look at the points total, you look at the race battle, you look at Hamilton being slightly ahead in both of those categories, but in general, it's actually Rosberg was slightly ahead of Hamilton on the Sunday, and that was very interesting to see and very surprising to see as well, and how close it was in the qualifying battle. As in the second half of the season, I said Rosberg was slightly better than Hamilton in both categories, so it's 5-4 in the qualifying battle, and it was 6-3 in the race battle to Rosberg in the second half of the season. So yeah, Hamilton struggling with that chassis, but Rosberg taking advantage and being very strong in that Mercedes as well, being very consistent throughout the year with his 16-point scoring finishes compared to Hamilton's 17. And so in general for Mercedes, it was fantastic leap forward from 2012, where they almost, over doubled their points, almost tripled their points total from the previous season. And it's just all these changes they've been making. They really have beefed up that technical department. Heading into 2014, they're in a very good place, it seems, with their structure at the top. Not having too many people at the top now with Rosberg, Ross Bourne sadly leaving, but that is a big gap that Paddy Lowe's got to fill there, and Toto Wolff, and maybe Niki Lauda, I believe, as well, non-executive chairman there as well, offering guidance where they're having to fill this one guy's role, and Ross Brawn, who was very good in that role. You saw that particularly in Malaysia, managing how to manage the drivers there with team orders. Rosberg listened to him. Will Rosberg listen to, say, Paddy Lowe or Toto Wolff in the same position in 2014? We'll never know. We have to find out there. But yeah, it's looking great for Mercedes, a team on the up with one of the best driver pairs, probably the best driver pair on the grid as well, considering that Rosberg and Hamilton are into their primes now, in their late 20s and almost into their 30s now. Crazy to think of that, considering how long they've been in the sport, how experienced they are in the sport now. And yeah, for Mercedes and for the driver pair, just a team on the up, and they pipped Ferrari to that second spot in the constructors' stands, and they will be very happy with that, as they had no match to the team at the top, Red Bull, and no one had a match for Red Bull all season long, particularly in that second half of the season. And yeah, great season for Rosberg, great season for Hamilton, and a great season for Mercedes. But they finished second in the standings. They had a fantastic job this season, but one team had a slightly better job this season, and one driver in particular as well, and that is Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull. Finally, we look at the Milton Keynes outfit, who have dominated F1 in recent years, and particularly did that in the second half of the 2013 season as they cruised to the championship with 596 points, 397 to Vettel, 199 to Webber. Compare this to 2012, where they scored a measly 460 points, 281 to Vettel and 179 to Webber. And coming into the 2013 season, Vettel had 5.5 years worth of F1 experience with Red Bull, Taurus and BMW Sauber. They grow up so fast nowadays. And Webber had 11 years worth of experience coming into his 12th and final year in F1, compared to 2012, where Vettel had 4.5 years and about 10 years worth of experience in F1. And the strange thing about the Red Bull this season was that they didn't have the best car until Belgium, and then they definitely had the best car in the second half of the season. As in the first half of the season, there was a variety of teams and drivers up there, such as Mercedes, Lotus, Ferrari, but there's a constant right up there in the championship in Vettel and in Red Bull. And it looks like over the summer period, with the updates that they had to Belgium, that really took the car forward. And also the philosophy of the car followed on from 2012 and couldn't be fully utilised until the mid-season tyre change. So basically, Red Bull designed the car too fast for the 2013 regulations, which is pretty ridiculous that I'm saying an F1 car was too fast for F1 when I lay it out there. But it was until the two tyres came in after the British Grand Prix fiasco, and that allowed them to explore their higher rake angle, which they use much higher than other teams. and so that meant they could run the car lower, meaning there was more air to the diffuser, more downforce, and a car that had a few tenths to half a second on the field in the second half of the season. Pretty ridiculous domination in the end from Red Bull and Vettel. And the team won their 4th consecutive Constructors' Championship time McLaren's run from 1988 till 1991, and they became the first team to win their first four titles consecutively. And this has only been bettered by Ferrari with their consecutive run of championships from 1999 till 2004. Also, Red Bull's total of 596 points is second only to their total from 2011 of 650 points. Pretty amazing. And also their engine supplier, Renault, won the final race of the 2.4 litre V8 era with Vettel in Brazil. Renault also won the final race of the 3 litre V10 era in 2005 and the final race of the 3.5 litre in 3.5 litre era in 1994 with Nigel Mansell in his Williams in Adelaide. But Renault also won a lot with Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull this season, as Vettel cruised to a 4th consecutive World Championship in the end with 397 points, with 13 wins, a second in Monaco and a third in Australia and Hungary. He had 9 poles in the first 2 races and the last 2 races included, and he had 3 poles in the first half of the season, 6 in the second half of the year. His 13 wins equaled Michael Schumacher's record from 2004, and he was crowned champion in India, and so India became the 20th country to crown an F1 world champion. He also beat Michael Schumacher's previous mark of 7 consecutive wins in a single season, and equaled Alberto Ascari's record of 9 wins in a row in races entered, with Ascari doing that in 1952 and 1953. Vettel also got 2 Grand Chiems this season in Singapore and Korea. The only other driver on the grid with a Grand Chiem is Alonso from the 2010 Singapore Grand Prix. And a Grand Chiem is when you get the pole, the win, the fastest lap, and need every single lap in the race. Not every single race. That could be a grand season, I guess you could call that. But in the end, Vettel had the measure of Webber. I think that's putting it lightly, during the whole of the year in every statistic as well. In the qualifying battle, it's 4-0, 5-0, 10-0, 14-1, 17-2 to Vettel in the end. In the race battle, it's 4-0, 5-0, 9-1, 14-1, 18-1 to Vettel in the end. In the Q3 battle, 3-0, 4-0, 9-0, 12-1, 15-2 to Vettel in the end. And front rows, 15-5 to Vettel, with front row lockouts for Red Bull in Australia, Italy, Japan, Abu Dhabi and America. When they both finished, it was 14-0 to Vettel. Webber didn't beat Vettel this season when they both finished at all. Compared to 2012, where it was 11-5. In point scoring finishes was 18-15 to Vettel, and when both cars finished, they always finished in the points. Compared this to 2012, where it was 17-15, so quite similar in that statistic, at least from 2012 to 2013. In podiums, it was 16-8 to Vettel, compared this to 2012, where it was 10-4. In laps led, it was 684 for Vettel, compared to Mark Webber's 69. And Vettel's 684 laps led, compared to the 447 laps for the rest of the field. That is domination highlighted and underlined there. He also got 7 fastest laps to Sebastian Vettel compared to Webber's 5. Compare that to 2012, it was 6-1 to Vettel, with Webber's fastest lap only coming in career. On the retirement front, it was only 1 for Vettel at Great Britain, having a gearbox issue when he was leading the race and Rosberg was catching him fast, maybe because of that gearbox issue. But in total for Vettel, it was a dominant year. It was a year where he's best remembered as being another dominant German at the beginning part of a decade with a dominant team. It is quite amazing how history has kind of repeated itself. But for his teammate Mark Webber, it was his final year in F1, where he finished 3rd in the standings with 199 points. His best race was 5 second place finishes, with a 3rd in Monaco, Italy and America. His best qualifying, there was 2 poles at Japan and Abu Dhabi, and this was better than in 2012, where he finished 6th in the standings with 179 points. And Webber leaves F1 with 1,047.5 points, good enough for 6th in the all-time standings. 215 race starts, tied for 8th all-time alongside Fernando Alonso. 9 wins, which is 33rd overall in the all-time standings, and 42 podiums, which is tied for 18th overall. And for Webber, he was out in Q1 and 2 twice. He was 22nd in China and 13th in Korea, compared to 2012, where it was 5-2 for Webber, including the Sebastian Vettel disqualification in Abu Dhabi. And for Webber, yes, he had more retirements, 3 for Webber and 1 classified at Singapore when he had that engine issue and got a ride home from Alonso. His retirements were at China when his wheel wanted to go somewhere else, in Korea when he was hit by Setill, and yeah, that's not the best brake marker, Setill, and in India when he had an alternator failure and was running a comfortable 2nd behind Vettel there. And so for Webber, overall, it was the end of a fantastic F1 career. Not many drivers can claim to be as successful as he has been in F1, and I'm looking forward to seeing how well he does in Porsche and a new environment and a new series and a new championship and a new way of racing, how well he does with Porsche in the World Endurance Championship. But for Webber in F1, it's a career maybe best remembered a bit like Rubens Barrichello, where on Barrichello's day he could be as good and better than Michael Schumacher, but he could never do it over a season, and he can never do it in a team essentially built around Schumacher at Ferrari. The same could similarly be said for Webber, where on his day he could definitely be as good as Vettel, as he showed on the odd occasion, particularly in the Bridgestone era in 2009-2010. But unfortunately in 2011 we went to the Pirelli era, and that's when Vettel stepped up their game. That's where Webber just kind of struggled compared to Vettel. He kind of highlighted their difference in qualifying and leaning on the soft tyre, where Webber couldn't do it as much as Vettel, and that's where Vettel was very good. Vettel was very good at manipulating the rear of the car with all this rear downforce that the Red Bulls had in the previous few years. Webber just couldn't do that as good as Vettel, and Vettel could just use the tools at his disposal just a bit better than Webber could. While Webber was very good in the, say, Michelin era and Bridgestone era, just couldn't quite match that in the Pirelli era. Unfortunately, with the DRS, with the showbiz tyres, the tyres that degrade a bit much, it's a very different era to the eras that Webber was particularly good in. And he perhaps should have won the title in 2010, his best shot at the World Championship, no doubt, where he also finished 3rd in the championship, his best championship finish in his F1 career, where again he was leading late into the season on a great run, but then career happened. He retired. That put him on the back foot a bit. That put Alonso in the lead of the championship, and then in Brazil he wanted to come first. The team didn't want that, but in the end it paid off for Vettel and the team as well, as they won the World Championship. Well, Webber was put on this strategy to kind of battle with Alonso rather than battle for the championship. Maybe a question that decision, but in the end in Abu Dhabi in 2010 he was just anonymous. And so for Webber, he remembered alongside the likes of, say, Carlos Reutemann as a driver who was very good but just couldn't quite get the crown, and disappeared when he had his championship title hunt or chance in 2010, like Reutemann disappeared in 1981 at Las Vegas. And overall for Webber, though, it has been a fantastic season at Minardi, at Jaguar, at Williams and at Red Bull, and he's provided some great memories, not least the one at the very end of his career when he did his lap of honour without his helmet on, and that's a moment I will probably never forget as an F1 fan for the rest of my life. And I will probably never forget Mark Webber as well, feisty Australian, built in that Australian mould, who was no bullshit. He talked like how he meant it, and I think F1's to do a bit less for missing him next season. But fantastic year for Vettel, fantastic career for Webber, and fantastic year for Red Bull. And so there are my thoughts on the 2013 Formula 1 season. It is probably not going to be an all-time classic. Instead, I think it was perhaps one of the worst seasons in recent memory, probably one of the worst seasons I've seen. It is such a different season from one half to the other, but so has 2012 been like that as well last season. And so Formula 1, big changes afoot for next season. It's going to be very interesting to see how those changes affect the pecking order, if it does at all, how it affects the drivers, how they have to change their driving styles once again. And experience may pay out. That's what we're kind of expecting with these changes. Guys like Jenson Button, who are a bit smoother on the car as well, maybe could do very well in this new era of Formula One with the power trains, I think they call them, at the back of the car now. And so I hope you have enjoyed this review. Of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, if you disagree or agree, or just your thoughts on the season as a whole. But thanks for watching, so till next time.